introduce you as Matt Cook.
Sure, that's fine.
And then I'm going to let you.
Jeff, you could probably mute. There we go. Yeah. There we go.
I hear you on.
Yeah, it's on, I can hear it. Up-a-da. Yeah, we'll be ready in just a moment here. Gotta get my presentation up.
Okay, I think we're almost ready. We're delighted to have Matt move from the balcony down to the front. And we've been looking forward to this trip. I will probably never take this trip myself. I looked at his saddle. How many saddles did you go through? One. Just one? And it's worn.
Muted. Yeah, there we are. Yeah, just the one saddle, and it's just a piece of leather. That's it. There's no cushioning on the saddle, and it's one of the most comfortable saddles I have.
I would never make it. Anyway, we're delighted to have Matt here, and he's going to make the introductions of himself, a little of his background. I know he's from Adrian originally, but some of you probably don't know any of his backstory. So I'm going to ask you, Matt, if you will give just a little bit of a background.
Sure.
I visit with him about his family. He's had a sister that was a nun, a Carmelite?
No. Franciscan.
Yeah. Anyway, so he's got some interesting backstories in his family history and everything like that, but he'll get to the bike part. And this is for questions because we are live streamed. And if you have any questions or want to ask him about something you see in the picture, we have to put your questions on the microphone. So I'll come over. Just raise your hand if you have a question in the middle, okay?
All right. Good morning, everybody. All right, here we go. As Judy said, hi, I'm Matt Cook. I have been hanging out here at First Presbyterian for the last 7-8 years or so. If some of you are going, I haven't seen you for the last 7 years, it's because, as Judy said, I've been hiding in the balcony. I've been the sound guy here for several years now and have really found a home here at First Presbyterian, and it's been absolutely wonderful. I've more recently, over the last couple of years, been more involved in more of public or front-facing ministries with the music ministries, such as choir and bell choir, but I've been around First Presbyterian here for a long time. As Judy said, I grew up southwestern Minnesota. Adrian is my hometown. Actually, my folks and my brother are here today, so that's exciting. I'm also known around here as the guy who likes to ride his bike a lot. So, how did we get here? I wanted to go back to the beginning. So about 5-6 years ago, this is August 12th, 2017, August 11th, I had a fall. That week was not a great week. On Monday, I locked myself out of my apartment and had to call a locksmith, And that like Thursday, Friday, I had a fall and broke my leg. There's no cool story to go with it. I apologize. I was merely over at a friend's place playing fetch with the dog, and I slipped on the lawn and fractured my lower left tibia. So a great week for sure. And I basically lived in a recliner for months. I spent 6 weeks in a soft cast, 6 weeks in a hard cast, 6 weeks in a boot, 4 weeks in a brace, and all of a sudden it was January of 2018, and I'm going, okay, I've got to do something different. Actually, during my recovery phase here, Pat can attest to this, I was actually using a cooler to go up and down the stairs so I could still run the soundboard and be here and be a part of this community. So I was like, I have to do something different. I have to do something different, and I wanted to say yes to things that were scary. Things that are scary to me are physical activity. Sports, terrifying things. And I still find sports incredibly intimidating. This is not my earpiece, you can tell. So one of the things I found was I was going to the gym, being better, starting to lose some weight, and I saw a flyer for a triathlon training session with Stanford. And I was like, sure, saying yes to things that are scary. And I called the coach and said, hi, my name is Matt. I can't run, I can't bike, I can't swim, I'm just coming off of a broken leg. Can you help me? And she was like, yeah, we'll figure it out. And so we did. After the training, I didn't really run ever again. I've just started swimming again. But something about riding a bike stuck. I don't know what it is. Something about riding a bike stuck. This is the first bike I bought back when I thought, what weirdos would have more than one bike? And I took this picture just after I finished my first 100 miles. It's not 100 miles in a day. It's 100 miles total. I'd ridden 100, since I had gotten this bike, I did 100 miles. I remember my first time I made it all the way around the bike trail. It was like 2.5 hours. Not fast, not speed, but I was so proud of myself. I did it. And so I kept riding a lot, and more and more and more. You'll see kind of this map throughout my little presentation here. Everywhere you see a blue line is a place I have been on my bike. There are approximately 1,000 miles of roads in the Sioux Falls Metro. I've been on about half of them at this point. So yes, I like to ride a lot. I actually just checked this morning. Since I started riding, I've finished now 17,322 miles, somewhere around there. So as you can see, I did a lot of Sioux Falls, and I started to go, well, what's next? So I started to adventure outwards, and I met new people. One of the guys is actually here today, Mr. Andrew Robertson, and they invited me on a bikepacking trip. And I'm like, what's bikepacking? I don't know what I'm doing, but sure, here we go. So I borrowed all my gear. I didn't have any bags, I didn't have a tent, I didn't have a sleeping bag, I had nothing. But through this incredible community of cycling here in Sioux Falls, they were like, yes, let's go. So that was my first adventure in the summer of 2019. We rode from Peoria, Illinois to Madison, Wisconsin, and back again. And I was hooked. And at the time, one of my friends said, hey, by the way, in 4 years, we're going to ride across the country. Are you in? Sure. What did I just sign up for? I don't know, but yeah, sure. So in 4 years, in 3 years, in 2 years, and I had wonderful adventures all over the country. As you can see, the blue line is now all over the place. I've had wonderful opportunities to ride the Natchez Trace down through Nashville to Mississippi, Texas Hill Country, the Iron Range of Minnesota. I've been across South Dakota a couple times now. But as you can see, there's now a big blue squiggle here, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So when we started our adventure, we had the first thought of somebody wanted to come along with us and help us carry all our gear, provide support. That's actually really big help in the biking world to have somebody just there in case of emergency here for you. Well, about 6 months before we started our journey, that individual had to drop out. So all of a sudden it's like, okay, now what? I'm going to ride across the country and I don't have a support vehicle. So all of a sudden your packing mentality has to change. All of a sudden you're like, everything weighs 1,000 tons and I have to carry it. So you're making choices of like luxury items, like, you know what, a real pillow, out the window. That third change of clothes, staying behind. Everything has to come with you on the bike. And so my bike is up here on the front here, as well as in this photo. This is everything you need to ride across the country. And actually, I ended up not using this front bag here because it's like, I don't need it, it weighs extra, it's in the way, send it home. So my friend Alex ended up doing some research, and he kept finding that really when you're packing for a trip like this, you're not packing for 10 weeks. You're packing for 1 week, 10 times. And when you have that mentality, all of a sudden the amount of stuff you need goes way down, and it can all fit on a bike. I remember taking this photo. This is like the day before we sent our stuff out to the West Coast. And I was just staring at it going, this is my life for the next 3 months. Everything is on these two wheels. And so we headed out to Washington. Washington State was our first destination. I flew out to Seattle with 3 other guys. We were a total of 6. How our stuff got out there, though, was one of the guys had a pickup truck. He and his sister drove all of our bikes and our gear out to the West Coast, which was really nice because then I didn't have to pack it on a plane and could just show up and ta-da, there's my stuff. So this was Washington. Every green dot you see there is a place we spent the night. Some of them were just overnights here we're at for today. Others of them were our rest days. Like out in Spokane here, we spent a full day doing nothing. And I really liked our rest days of doing nothing. At the beginning here, we were averaging probably 50 miles a day. As we get further into the trip, you'll see our mileage starts to grow. So we have the Olympic Peninsula, the Cascades, and up here starting into the Rocky Mountains. An ocean of possibilities. Here was me at the ocean. We had spent 4 years talking about this. We had spent 4 years going in 4, in 3, in 2, in 1, we're gonna go. And then here we were. It's like, okay, now what? It's just like, okay, and you're telling yourself, if I just go far enough, if I just ride far enough east, somewhere over there is an ocean. I mean, we can do that here in South Dakota. Look to the east, look to the west. Somewhere far enough in one direction is an ocean. And I'm kind of poetic at times. So out on the coast here, you can see lots of these little brown pebbles. I took one with me. I actually took 2 with me because my thought was, if I work hard enough, if I believe hard enough, I'm going to carry these 2 rocks all the way across the country, and I'm going to throw one in the other ocean. And so away we went, and off we were. And soon we left the Olympic Peninsula behind. This was probably some of the most gorgeous sunsets on the edge of the Olympic Peninsula. It's at Fort Casey State Park. Up next, Idaho. And yes, we saw lots of potato fields in kind of the Washington, Idaho area. Once we were in Idaho proper, there wasn't much for potatoes because we're back in the national forest. We actually kind of took across Idaho through the Idaho Panhandle National Forest. So we were just outside Coeur d'Alene and Wallace. And our first night in Idaho was a little like, okay, now what? Because through our trip, the only date that was booked, the only date that was set, the only place we had to be was I had a flight from Sioux Falls to Seattle on May 21st. Everything else, up for possibility, including where am I going to spend the night? Oftentimes we would just roll into a town and go, hi, help please. And sometimes it worked, other times it didn't. We were at a national campground in Idaho, and they said, sorry, we're full. okay. What do you mean you're full? I mean, there's plenty of room here. I can see all the grass. There's lots of room. And the guy's like, yeah, I would have loved to help you. I grew up in Sioux Falls. I went to Sioux Falls College. It would have been so great to chat. It's just like, but we're full. Okay. So it is legal to camp in the National Forest. And we're like, I guess all we can do is just continue. We can just keep pushing on and hopefully we find something. But just a few miles up the road, we actually found probably one of my favorite campsites of the whole trip. And this was very much a moment of blessing. It was just this huge, like big, wide ground area, nice and level. We were along a stream. These gorgeous, gorgeous trees. The man here is probably about this tall. So you can just get the sense of how big and how grand these trees were in this national forest. And so that's where we spent the night. And then the next day, we went up. So in this picture here, you can kind of see some of the colors. Anything red is steep. There's a lot of red there. It's at least a 10% grade, if not steeper. At 10% plus, that's when you start getting the warnings on the roads of like trucks, slow down, trucks, be careful. I have to climb that. It's not fun, especially when you have people on mountain bikes who are getting ferried to the top via a pickup, and they just come past you and wave. Oh, it's like, oh, that's great. Cheaters. So to give you a sense of the steepness, at 4 miles, I climbed 1,000 feet. The bike trail here in Sioux Falls is 20 miles around and is approximately 300 feet of elevation. So in 4 miles, I had climbed 60 miles of bike trail elevation. So yes, up. And at that point, actually on that ascent, is when I crashed the first time. I've ridden thousands of miles. Yes, I still crashed, and I was so frustrated at myself, but it's like, it's okay. It's okay. I doused myself in a water bottle to kind of clean out a wound and wrapped myself in a headband, and it was fine. It was fine. And onwards we went to Montana. Montana was our next state. And to North Dakota. Okay, I know some of you love Montana, and some of you think it's a great place. We all struggled with it, and I guess, fine, I have to tell you about it. It was a hard state to travel through. So, welcome to Montana. It's a big state. It took us, this was the state we spent the most amount of time in, 12 days. Our trip was 73 days, so you start to do the percentage math, and a big chunk of it is in Montana. And it's a big state with a lot of nothing. You know Ovando? Oh my goodness, this is great. Ovando. Ovando is this lovely tiny little town of about 50 people just outside of Missoula. And this was a wonderful respite for us because we had just spent the day, our first day, on what would become our least favorite road in all of the United States of America, Montana State Highway 200. And it was raining, by the way. So it was a wonderful find. This town lives for travelers and cyclists. You roll into town, and they have sandwich boards saying, welcome to Ovando. Here's the town Wi-Fi. Here's where you can find a place to stay. Here's where you can find a place to eat. There's camping over here. We've got an inn if you want an indoor option. We've got fun options too. They had a teepee, a check wagon. You could spend a night in the town jail if you wanted. $5 a night. We stayed in the teepee that night, and even though it was raining, it was dry, and it was really, really wonderful. Also, we are in bear country here. Some people ask me, like, oh, were you in bear country? Yes, Ovando had notices all over town going, you are in bear country. You were in bear country, and they had lockers all over town for you to put your stuff in. Unfortunately, they had an incident, 3-4 years ago now, where a lady was unfortunately killed by a bear near Ovando. So, yes, we locked up all our stuff, and it was just a great evening and a wonderful chance to get out of the rain And this town cares so much about your stories. It didn't matter if you were near, if you were far, they were here for you. They were here to provide you with a warm meal. Everything was very fairly priced, if not cheap. And it's just like, it was rather delightful. So we had that goodness, and then the very next day was probably one of the hardest days of the entire trip. Continental Divide Day, because what goes up was us. We had to climb all the way to the top of the Continental Divide, which separates, of course, the West from the East when it comes to a lot of the rivers and landscapes. So up we went. And occasionally, you start to notice that our shoulders here get skinnier. Shoulders get skinnier. Does traffic get slower? No. Traffic has a posted speed limit of 70 miles an hour on a 2-lane highway, but it goes down to 65 at night. There were a couple of moments here where it's like I'd pull off because there were a little place to take a picture because it's very scenic. We're in the Rockies here, and there were lots of moments where when I would pull off, boom, that's when the semi would come past. I was like, oh, thank you. Thank you for the blessing. Thank you for the grace of that's the moment when the semi comes past. Because a lot of them, you were in their way, and they weren't going to move over because a lot of times they can't see around the bend. This road is windy, this road is up and down, so they're trying to just do their job, and you're in the way. So we reached the top of Rogers Pass at 5,610 feet, and then we got to go down. Except in order to go down, we had to keep going up. And rather than, we switched off of the Great Highway, that is Montana State 200, onto, I guess this is a road? These are some ATV, backtrack woods, national forest, just, I guess it's a road. And it was hard riding. I'm not a big fan of technical riding. I'm not very good at mountain biking or single track riding, are terms you might hear about what we were doing. And I was not having a good day. Also, you can see it's raining, lightning, thunder, rain, and I'm stuck trying to walk my bike down this treacherous, rocky garbage. I'm trying to smile here. I honestly am. I was not having a happy day. We had water crossings, and then I had to take a moment because I'm having this really awful day. And just this moment of perspective where it's like, look at this pretty purple flower. In the middle of all this garbage, all my frustrations, here's this beautiful flower. So coming down from it, I crashed. The first time I crashed, I laughed because it's funny. It was a little muddy, a little like pothole, mud puddles, and you weren't sure how deep it was going to be. Would it be 3 inches deep? Would it be 6 inches deep? Some you could get around, some you just had to go through, walk through. I walked through a lot of these water crossings. At the time, I was wearing some of my favorite socks, which are white pandas. They're panda socks. They were not white pandas by the time I got done with this day. And so on the way down, first time I crashed, it was funny. The second time I crashed, it was not funny. And I was done. I was so done. And you think about where we were in our journey, we're still so near the beginning. We're still so near the West Coast, and I'm done. Where's the car? Hop me on a car, hop me on a plane, I'm going home. This sucks, and I'm tired of it. And I just sat there on the bike. I had scraped up my shin, I had scraped up my elbow. Again, my poor elbow spent half the summer trying to heal itself. And I was done. I just screamed, I'm done. I'm frustrated, I'm done. This sucks. I just screamed it. And I sat there. And at some point, you have to come to the realization of like, yeah, I can scream it out. Nobody's there to hear me. It's like, oh, well, that's too bad. Here's the car to take you home. It's not coming. I have to pick myself up and figure it out. And so that's what I had to do, was pick myself up, meander my way back all the way down to this gravel road, and praise God when I found pavement down at the bottom. We rolled into Wolf Creek, and then we camped just on the headwaters of the Missouri, And my friend Art, I think, put it very well, kind of how our day went. He wrote, "I rolled out of the tent this morning after sleeping in the grime from yesterday's ride. I looked around at the ragged guys I was riding with and thought, yes, there is a point at which cyclists turn feral." But we're having a great time. Today's 65-mile along the Missouri River into Great Falls was beautiful and relatively easy. So yes, we're right along the headwaters of the Missouri, the same Missouri that continues its way all the way down to west of us here in South Dakota. Then we get to eastern Montana. And we've moved away from the rockiness, the over the top, the trees, the gorgeousness. It's still continuing on America's worst highway, Montana State Highway 200. We didn't have any other options. There's really not a lot of ways to get across Montana. I'm pretty sure each one of these pictures is actually taken on a separate day. They are not 4 copies of the same picture. We talk about a lot of times South Dakota is like big and open and there's nothing for miles around. This is times 10. You get on the road and my little computer would tell me, ride 80 miles. No turns, no stops. That's it, 80 miles today. Well, that means you have nowhere to stop for food, you have nowhere to stop for water. And we, on our trip, will get spread out throughout the day. Just the nature of it, we ride at different speeds, we like to start at different times in the morning. And we'd be upwards of 10, 15 miles from the front guy to the back guy. So I spent a lot of time all by myself this summer. And as you can see, once again, look at that shoulder. What shoulder? Semi, double gravel truck. Get me off of this highway. I'm so tired of this highway. This little oasis in here, Sand Springs, Montana, that's all it is. That's the whole town, is one little gas station, and they will make you a killer milkshake, by the way. Which brought us to North Dakota, and a happy dance, because we were done with Montana. A few days across North Dakota, and our first stop in North Dakota was Medora, and the absolute joy that is the Medora musical. This thing makes me so happy. But first, before we left, Montana had one last farewell goodbye. Gosh, I can't get out of Montana. My tire decided to no longer tire and was flat. So we patched it, we put in a tube. It's like, okay, it's only 7 miles into Medora. It's only 7 more miles to Medora. This was supposed to be a short, like 30-mile day, nice and easy, downhill into the Badlands, and my tire's like, no. Okay, so we patched it, and then I'm rolling into Medora, and I start to hear a thump, 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 thump out of my tire. My tube is literally ripping my tire apart. So this was a full stop. We can no longer continue. I rode to the campground on the edge of town and was just like, we're stopping here. We're done. No more. We can't continue until this is fixed. And thankfully, by the grace of God, once again, Medora just happened to have an awesome little bike shop that just happened to have 2 of the perfect tires just for me. Once we got that situated, we got to go to the absolute gem that is the Medora musical. This thing is amazing. It's like pageantry, perhaps a vague bit of, lots of pageantry, lots of patriotism, perhaps a tiny little bit of propaganda, but it's all good. This town is all in on Teddy Roosevelt, and they've built this whole stage. This is amazing. It's outdoors, and in order to get down to it, you have to take an escalator. I've never seen an outdoor escalator before. Genius! And the show runs as the sun sets, and kind of the big finale number I don't know, I didn't do the math, they said it was the 125th anniversary of Teddy Roosevelt's charge on San Juan Hill. And according to them, it's inspired by the rough and tumble cowboys of Medora, North Dakota. We did a little history background. It seemed that, yes, Teddy Roosevelt did live in Medora for a few years, but nobody liked him. and he failed as a rancher, so he left. But now they love him. So they did this recreation a little bit of the charge on San Juan Hill, but they put a modern spin on it. They do a 21 gun salute, but rather than having guns, all the characters have electric guitars. So it's ready, aim, fire with electric guitars. They've got pyrotechnics going off on the hill behind you. You have actual cowboys riding up onto the ridge way in the back. And the soundtrack for it all, Final Countdown. And then we get to the finale number. The gals are in their red and white stripes. The guys are in blue jackets with silver stars on the lapels. Super Americana. And of course, the perfect song track, You Can't Stop the Beat from Hairspray. And on the very final note, perfectly timed, fireworks. Like, it's so over the top. I was in love. And after a lot of the troubles we had in Montana, this was very much a welcome respite. Then we continued across North Dakota and found some drama. Because as a group, you're a group of 6, which is actually a very large group for doing journeys of this scale and this way. A lot of times people travel in 2, maybe 4, but 6 is a large group, which means you have some opinions. About pie. So we rolled into Tower City, North Dakota, and by the beckoning of Jeff, we had to stop at this little bakery attached to the gas station. The bakery was, we hear it's amazing. He's going on and on about this bakery, so we have to stop. But the bakery is closed that day. But they will sell us a whole pie. They had still a cabinet full of pies, rather than just buy the slice. Well, how do you choose? So we did pie by committee. And all the ones that are good choices, for whatever reason, the other guys decided to get rid of. And apparently I did the same with their favorites, even though they're wrong. At one point, Josh even said, and I quote, "Life is too short to put fruit in pie." We're still fighting. But it's like, okay, we had our pie. It was fine. It was probably the lowest common denominator amongst all of us. And we're like, it's fine. And then the next day, Art decides to once again so eloquently post we had a bit of a conundrum at Tower City. The pie place was closed when we arrived, but they agreed to sell us one entire pie. Well, choosing the pie we all wanted from the dozens of flavors was almost the end of us. As we eliminated a flavor we didn't want, it became clear I was traveling with a bunch of cyclists who wouldn't know a good pie from a kick in the pants. My own son eliminated coconut cream. After banana cream and lemon meringue were unceremoniously voted off the island, things were bleak. We finally ended up with a peanut butter cream pie. It was good, but I'm pretty sure nobody really wanted it. So from this point forward, no more pie by committee. And there was no more pie by committee. There was plenty of pie, though. Then to Minnesota, my home state. I was very excited for Minnesota. A few days to get across Minnesota. You have noticed that these green dots are pretty far apart, except for here. That's not a mistake. That day, there was a crunch. We spent the previous night at a state park just outside of Red Wing, Minnesota, and I got up in the morning and rolled into Lake City, and Manuel was like, "You gotta look at my bike." A bike is not supposed to look like that. A bike cannot really recover from that. So what had happened, according to him, was he was riding along, and he had some kids run out in front of him on the street. And in swerving to miss them, he ran into a tree and crunched his bike. He was fine. Just, I think, a little scrape on one of his hands, nothing major. When you look at the damage to the bike, is a blessing all in itself. So now, what do we do? Because this is, once again, a full stop. We cannot continue. This bike is not moving. We're not in a town that has a bike shop this time. what do we do? Well, that very day, my girlfriend Madison, as well as some other friends of ours, were on their way out to see us for the week. They were come join us for a week over the 4th of July, which was incredible. So within an hour, Manuel was in a car headed to Rochester, where he got a new bike. Huzzah! And then that gave us a chance to just kind of like chill, have an extra day off. It was really, really nice. Up next, Wisconsin. Across Wisconsin. This is from a previous trip we just came down and over. And as I mentioned over in Minnesota, as we crossed the border, this week was really special because we had, or at least for me, we had my family, my folks came out, Madison was out, our dear friends, Jason and Edie Muller, were out with us for the week. And we had spent like 6 weeks at this point on the road, away from friends and family. We actually deliberately did not route through South Dakota because, and I'm pretty sure it would have been true, the worry was if we came through South Dakota and Sioux Falls, we would not have left. And I fully believe that to be the case now, looking back on it. We're like, nope, we can do it, we'll get up, it'll be fine. No, we would have stayed. So yeah, my family had come out, and it was great because I did not grow up a cyclist. I did not. You saw my journey of how we started. I've only been riding the way I do now for like 5 years, but we would ride bikes as kids. That was very much a family thing for us. Was we would Sunday afternoons throw the bikes in the back of the pickup truck, go to Laverne, go to Lake Chautauqua, and ride 5-6 miles and grill some hamburgers and hot dogs, and that was Sunday afternoon. So for them to come out and join me on this trip and ride with me, a few miles, a day or two, was really, really special. It just kind of felt like a full circle moment with us all. So this is the Cannon Valley Trail outside of Cannon Falls in Red Wing, Minnesota, with our friends Jason, Edie, and Madison, and then my folks out here in Wisconsin, near Trempealeau, Wisconsin. This is right on the Mississippi River. So we are standing in Wisconsin, and you can see Minnesota on the other side of the river there. Up next, Illinois and Indiana. These were kind of blitzy states, where we came through pretty fast. North of Chicago, through Chicago, and through Indiana. Boom, just like that. We deliberately routed this way to pick up my friend David, who lives in LaPorte, Indiana, and we actually were able to stay at his house for a day, which was really awesome. And this one was a story, I was like, do I include this? But I'm like, yes, it really matters. So as many of you know, previous times I worked at the Washington Pavilion. If you didn't know, hi, I'm an arts kid, I'm a theater kid, I'm a dork. And I spent many years working at the Washington Pavilion here in town, various capacities, backstage, front of house. But in 2020, I decided to leave. And during that time, I had lots of wonderful things happen. I got to do all sorts of cool stuff, meet wonderful people. But I think in there, I had also taken on a lot of struggles, a lot of trauma, a lot of pain, a lot of hurt. And it had just gotten to a point between dealing with that and the collapse of the entertainment industry with COVID in 2020 that I needed to change and I needed to go. But I'm still holding on to pieces, aka this hat. I have my Washington Pavilion hat, Washington Pavilion Management Incorporated hat with me. And my friends Alex and David were like, you need to get rid of that hat and you need to let go of that hurt that you've been carrying with you for the last few years and like over the last decade or so from when I started in 2011. So I was carrying all those bits of hurt. And so we decided that the best course of option to get rid of that hat was to set it on fire. I don't know how David took this picture. I don't know how he got this picture. But he sent it to me and it was just so perfect. I still love that organization. I still love the pavilion. I still love what that place does for our community, and they support it 1,000%. But this was the chance for me to just kind of let go of some of that hurt, some of that pain. I even got a new hat from Sunshine Brewing out of Wisconsin, probably one of my new favorite breweries. It's bright, it's colorful, it's lots of fun. So after Indiana, we were into Michigan. Pretty quick trip through Michigan over to Detroit. Detroit has a history of being, the Motor City, the Paris of the West, this great, grand city. But it's been through some troubles, particularly with manufacturing, moving overseas, the housing crisis of 2008. Detroit's had some struggles, and we saw them. We saw entire apartment buildings just boarded up. We saw blocks where there should be houses, but there were none. We saw some of the houses that remained were still very blighted, trash in the streets, windows in various states of completeness, and it was just really tough. And you could see that the city had really been through some struggles. A lot of times cities are built to always grow. They always grow. It works because we just keep growing. But what happens when a city shrinks? Cities are not very good at shrinking. And you see a lot of pain and a lot of hurt. But even in this, there were moments of goodness. We came through Detroit on a Sunday morning, and we're riding down the street, and I hear music. I hear church music. I hear raucous singing. I hear drums. I hear piano. And I hear people having a wonderful time. We roll a couple more blocks, and I see a pastor out on the street waving hi to his congregation on a Sunday morning. So even in all these moments of pain, there's these little seeds of growth, these little seeds of change. And I really think Detroit is coming back slowly learning to heal from all the pain that it's been through over the last 15 years, 20 years or so. Up next, Canada. And I can attest that the national anthem is not part of the entrance exam to get into Canada. My family was rather disappointed in that fact. So we came across Ontario, and Ontario is cool. Canada was fantastic. We had a lot of fun in Canada, met wonderful people, the food was great, poutine all around, it's great. Particularly want to talk about Niagara Falls. This is a fun way to kind of end our Canadian adventure, because when in Niagara Falls, thou shalt ride the boat. It's like a commandment, right? You have to do it. It's amazing. So we got there the night before, and it's kind of divided up. You have the American Falls, they call it, and then you have the Horseshoe Falls, which are kind of on the Canadian side. And the American Falls are obviously on the American side. And you can, every night on the Canadian side, they have a fireworks show that goes up over the falls. And it's really, really cool. And then the next morning, we had the wonderful opportunity to take one of the boats up to the falls, and they literally put you in the spray of the Horseshoe Falls. It's overwhelmingly just in awe. They said it was 500,000 gallons a second or something approximate to that. Roll over those falls. You think about a gallon of water, and then you think how absolutely inconsequential, beyond inconsequential, 1 gallon of water is to something as grand as Niagara Falls. And your head can't even imagine just how much water that is, and how cool it is that the world that has been sculpted through time and sculpted through God's hand has features such as this. And how lucky are we to enjoy it and appreciate it. So yes, we got very wet. Then it was back to the United States via Buffalo. And we came across New York really via the Empire State Trail, which follows the historic Erie Canal. I always thought the Erie Canal was in Pennsylvania, because, Erie, Pennsylvania? It's not. It's always been in New York. Good thing that wasn't a question on my 8th grade geography bee. Wouldn't have been school champion. So yeah, we came across, and one thing that was cool, at this point, we're on like day 60, some of our adventure, and it's just a lot. 60 days of getting up and then riding, and you're like, okay, 80 days, I got 80 miles to do today. And I had some days, especially like coming into like Michigan and the Detroit area, where it's like I was counting down before I had even begun. And you're just like, how do you enjoy a day where you're ready to be done before it begins? And you can't. It's really hard. So I had a really cool meeting with these three gals. I guess here's a little bit of New York, where you're like, look how gorgeous it is, how wonderful. This is one of my favorite pictures of the trip, is this bumblebee on these wild pea vines outside of Schenectady. And I got caught in the rain one day, as you can see there, and I was very happy about it. I actually took shelter underneath a bridge for like a half hour, and I was much happier. We were trying to enjoy this, and I met these three gals from the Lancaster, Pennsylvania area. You have Abby, you have Vicky, and you have Jen. And they were taking a week to kind of do their first big bikepacking trip as friends, where they were also riding the Erie Canal. They parked their car in Albany, took the Amtrak train to Buffalo, and were riding back to their car. And we had kind of leapfrogged them throughout the week. It was fun. I met them back in this previous picture for the first time when we were at this Lockport, some of the first canals, lock and dam on the canal system. And so that's when I first met them, so we leapfrogged them throughout the week, and I just had a day where I had, just for fun, we stopped at the town, one town over from Island, Island is where Remington Arms is based out of. And whether you agree or disagree with the Remington Arms and the gun and ammo industry, when you're one town away from one of the nation's largest ammunition manufacturers, it's worth stopping by. It's a giant, giant building. It's really cool. But I caught up with these gals and I said, hey, can I ride with you today? And they said, absolutely. So I got to do that. I spent the whole day riding with them. I had to ride a little bit further at the end of the day because we were headed to the next town over, and they got to stay in this literal castle. They had an Airbnb hotel in this like castle in this town in New York State. But it gave me a chance to just have this perspective reset. Because as I said, we were on day 60. They were on day 5. They're very much in this mode of everything is wonderful, everything is new. And sometimes I wonder with some of our stories of like, I have lots of wonderful stories about Washington, struggles in Montana, and it's just like, was Montana hard? Or had I just started to like fail to experience the wonder of it because it's like, okay, another day, another day, another day. I'm still of the perspective that Montana was hard. But a chance to reset your perspective and to be with new people and explore new things. Like we found this little hose coming off the side of the mountain and it said, under $500 penalty, put the hose back in the barrel. There was no barrel, but here's this stream of water. And we're like, is this safe to drink? I'm like, I don't know, but I'm gonna try it. So yeah, I had my little cup and I sipped it, and it was great. And I'm assuming it was fine. But to spend the day with them was very much, because they're in this, everything is new, everything's fun. And they're a great team together, they're good friends. I'm very jealous of Abby. She works as a quality control specialist at Turkey Hill Farms, which is a kind of an East Coast ice cream manufacturer. So she's a professional ice cream taster. Jealous. Our last couple states were Vermont and New Hampshire. Quick through the Green Mountains, and then at this point we're well into Appalachia. And a lot of people know Appalachia as like this kind of backwoods banjo land. I didn't hear any banjos. I just saw a lot of green, a lot of wonder, and a lot of climbing. On our steepest climbing days, where we climbed the most amount of feet in one day, the two biggest days were actually in Vermont, believe it or not. We had like 5,000 foot days of climbing in one day. That's steep. And along the way, I very much struggled with like a self-saboteur, an imposter syndrome of like, I'm not good enough. That's something I've struggled with for many years. I can hide it well, but at some point that self-doubt, it's real, where you're like, I'm not enough. I'm too big, I'm too tall, I'm too slow. I'm fill in the blank. And those words really hurt, and you know the words that hurt you the most. And it's really easy to say to someone, oh, just love yourself, or you're good enough. It's really hard to believe it and to feel it. And so actually, towards the end of New York and into Vermont, I found myself like, you know what? I'm gonna have some prove it days to myself. Where I'm like, I am better, I am stronger. And so I set myself little goals in my head, and I did it. And one of the goals I set was climbing this hill in Vermont, because once again, it was like, oh my gosh, because it was, at times, it was a 20% grade on a gravel hill. And I had to sidewinded it, which is a technique where rather than riding just straight up the hill, you stair step it, and you kind of weave your way back and forth across it. And you increase the distance and reduce the intensity of the elevation, even though you still end up climbing the whole thing. And I made it to the top. And I did it. And I did it. And I told that self-saboteur to sit down, shut up, and to watch me achieve. And I still have to tell myself that, of like, I did this. You can't tell me I'm not good enough. Because I have proven to myself that I am good enough. And I just have to remind myself of that every time. We crossed the Appalachian Trail. I don't know if anybody remembers in the news of a rainstorm this summer that hit Vermont, or it was like 9 inches of rain hit Vermont. Vermont is gone. Everything in Vermont is underwater. So we're like, okay. But thankfully, and there were lots of areas heavily affected. We only saw one road that was like, oh yeah, there's a lot of water that came through here and washed out a ton of gravel. Thankfully, we were still able to kind of walk our way through this. The picture doesn't show it well, but there's about a 3-foot drop from the road surface to the bottom of that little ditch that's then submerged. We also stayed at the state park, which was fun, because they had these shelters where you could we set our tent up underneath the roof. It was great. But they wanted to make sure that we all had parking passes for our bikes that were next to our tents. But yeah, sure, I'll take a hanging tag pass for my bike. The guy was very happy to help. And so 73 days, 4,000 miles, 100,000 feet of climbing later, we found an ocean. And that moment of like, back on the West Coast, if I get up and I try, and I just go far enough east, and I just keep going, and every day I push just a little further, somewhere over there, somewhere far, far away is an ocean. Somewhere far, far away is an ocean. And then we found it. And then it was weird, because you spent so long talking about this journey, building up to this journey. I had many wonderful members of this congregation who supported us before, during. It was wonderful. It was really cool how far our story had traveled, and all the wonderful people who were praying for us, who were messaging us saying, we're here for you, you're not alone, you can do this. And then we got to an ocean, and it's like, okay, now what? But the ocean was really nice. This time the ocean was warm, and the waves were calm, versus the West Coast. They were cold and harsh. And to stand in the water and just swish my feet around, and to just contemplate on on the great journey we've been through. This is actually probably another one of my favorite photos, is my bike just sitting on the coast with my helmet on it, and it's just kind of like me walking away and saying, I did it. I did it. But of course, I'm not at the ocean anymore. We didn't stay at the ocean. We continued on. And up next was coming back home. For 73, really 80 days, because after we reached an ocean, Alex and I had another adventure up in Montreal. And then it was time to come home. So for 80 days, I've been away, playing this game, am I traveler or am I transient? It's something we encountered a lot on our journey, was are we travelers or are we transients? Mike was talking about that during the sermon today, of like, whatever you do to the least of them, you do unto me. And sometimes people were amazing. They were like, here's some food, here's some water, tell me your story, I'm excited to hear from you and learn about you. And other times, we were transients. And they're like, we were never like attacked, we were never like got after, but we had some places where it very much felt like you are not welcome here. Sometimes in where we wanted to stay, like we're a group of 6 guys, we all have our individual tents, we'd roll, like the only place to stay is an RV park in town. Well, you all have to have your own site. We're just one person tents. Oh, it's just the rules. So my one person tent is going to cause you just as much trouble as this 50-foot RV that's going to roll in and needs full electric, sewer, and water. Yep, that's the rules. Basically saying, you're not welcome. So after all those days of playing traveler or transient, many of which were traveler, I got to come home. It was really nice. My family had come out to the airport to come pick me up. Made little signs that says, welcome home, Matt. He biked across the entire U.S. Madison had made this wonderful sign and flowers at home there. It says, welcome home, Matt. My neighbors had hung a streamer on the garage. Welcome home. Awesome. We've missed you. And it was strange. I'll be honest, I've been gone for almost 3 months. And it's just like, hi. A little shell shocky almost, like this is my home. This is where I want to be. But really, really nice. And then, that next Sunday, I came back to church and Pat announced Matt's back. And you all cheered, and it was just so delightful. And so that's a trip across America. Any questions?
Matt, could you tell us about how you planned this trip? Who decided which roads and how much time went into that? Did you change any of your plans in that regard?
Yes. So Art, some of you might know him, Art Holden, is kind of our big route planner of a lot of our adventures. It's just kind of one of his things is he loves to build routes and build maps, and he's very good at it. So about a year before we left, he took a good armchair pass at okay, here's how we want to route across. He asked, are there any things you want to see on the way? For example, I'm like, the Medora musical, please. And I was not disappointed. Another guy wanted to go see a statue in Detroit, which is why I picked Detroit. We really wanted to see our friend David in Indiana. So that's kind of how we got our general route. Day to day, he would go through the map every day because, like I said, the only date that was set was when we left. So sometimes we would ride further, sometimes we would ride less, and so the routes would flex day to day. And sometimes you roll into a town and they go, hey, by the way, this was Richardson, North Dakota. Like, hey, by the way, all these roads you're trying to ride are closed because they're flooded. A lot of times in our world, and I think Andrew can attest to this, where it says road closed, you ask yourself, well, how closed is it? That road in Vermont, that was closed. We continued on our way, but sometimes you would go and, yep, that road is closed. There is no bridge. There is a giant construction crew there that's actively working, and you cannot get through there. So then we would have to reroute. A lot of times, whoever was in front was kind of the route tester of the day, and if there was a problem, they would message back to the group saying, here's the problem, here's how I managed to fix it. I suggest taking this road around. So we would change our routes. Really, our routes were in flex every day till we got all the way to the end. And it was kind of cool. So we did an armchair pass, and over the course of our trip, we actually only finished one day later than our first guess of how long it would take us to get across the United States. We anticipated finishing like August 2nd, and we finished on August 3rd.
Somebody else had a question. Was it you?
Well, it wasn't.
Did you get that rock thrown into the Atlantic?
I did. And I actually took another one home with me. So now I still have two rocks. This one's from the Pacific, and this one's from the Atlantic. And I was able to pick a slightly bigger one at the Atlantic because I was like, oh, I don't have to carry it across the country.
I want to know if anybody got sick.
Yes. So Lake City was the bike crash. Actually, one of our members was never confirmed, but we're assuming he came down with a light case of COVID. So he actually was very grateful. So like, it all worked out remarkably well. So he had time to be sick. We had people to help fix the bikes, and we were just able to spend a day with our friends and family around Lake City. So yes, but that was a worry of ours across America, is because you are 6 individuals riding 4,000 miles. So your body is under stress. You're meeting all these new people. You're in all these new places, unknown situations. Illness was a worry. But thankfully, we had only that one day where it was like, hey, I am not great. So we rested for a day and then continued onward. And also, thankfully, no major injuries. No broken bones, no major scrapes, nothing more than a Band-Aid could fix. So we were very, very blessed for that as well.
So Matt, if you would have gotten the pie choice, what would it have been?
Apple.
Good choice. And emotionally, what was it like when you finished? Were you on a high, and then you got back to Sioux Falls? Was it
I was
tough?
stuck in the middle because it's like this feeling of like this high. I've achieved this. I've talked about this for so long. I've talked about this for years. I've been doing this for months. And like, oh my goodness, there's the ocean. I remember seeing the ocean for the first time, and I almost started crying. Because it was like, this is like, we found it, we did it. And then it's like, okay, but now what? Alex showed me a video on our trip because we talked about this, and it's called Beautiful Idiot. And it talks about how you're like, in your head, you're after the goal. But when you achieve the goal, you're like, wait, it wasn't about the goal. It was about the journey. And that's what makes you a beautiful idiot. And it's a really kind of powerful video, and I encourage people to check it out. But yeah, so it's this mix of this high, but yet a little bit of grief. I'll be honest, it's like, it's a weird place to be in excited grief, where you're like, okay, now what? And I'm still working on the now what. We're talking about, well, what's the next adventure? Or maybe thinking the Allegheny Pass next summer, which runs from Pittsburgh down to DC. So we're not done with adventures yet, but we're still figuring it out.
Other questions?
It's a comment. Your presentation was so eloquently given. I think it would make a really interesting book. Have you
That's what a
thought
lot of
that?
people have said. So I took over 2,000 pictures this summer. And one of the things I really struggled with this presentation was, how do I take 4 years of buildup, 73 days of adventure, and reduce it down to 1 hour? So I actually blogged our entire adventure. And it's online. It's called adventureandbike.com. People have said, "Oh, great! Now you wrote the blog. Now you should turn it into like a memoir or some sort of adventure story." So maybe.
Okay. Well, okay, one more question, and then our time is up.
So what do you feel you learned?
What do I feel I learned? I think one of the big things I learned is I am capable. I am enough. I listened to a lot of music on the trip, mainly to get me out of the thoughts in my head, where it's just hours and hours of quiet and hearing your bike roll along. And one of the songs that came up was Pink, I Am Here. And it's like, I am here, I've done it, I've already been through the struggles, and now watch me achieve. And that's one of the things I found myself thinking a lot was like, I'm here. I'm doing it. I can do this. I can do things that are scary. Thinking back to the beginning of the story where I was like, I'm going to say yes to things that are scary. I'm going to say yes to opportunity because I never know where it's going to take me. And that's taken me wonderful places. And I'm still learning where saying yes to this is going to take me next. What will this yes lead to? Because one of my mantras is somehow, some way, today is going to be a good day. I might not know it today, because you know what? When I broke my leg in August 2017, that was not a good day. But it has led to so many wonderful stories, adventures, people, and journeys that how could it not have been a good day? I might not have seen it then, but I see it now.
Well, let's hear it for Matt. And I think I would like to have your song list, the things that were uplifting to you, because we all have those same thoughts that you have. And you spoke very eloquently about how you get out of your own head and speak positive images for yourself, and we all need that. So I'm for your song list. So thank you very much for coming, and we thank you for Matt's family for making the trip over from Adrian, and thank you. Do you need some help?